Good. Let's talk about item 5A5, approval of a request for proposal for an ambulance service provider for the City of Edmond.
While Chief Goodwin walks up here, I just want to provide a little preface to this. This action we talk about tonight is one that we do not take lightly as a staff to talk about an opportunity to do a request for proposal for I'll call life safety activity, which is ambulance service is critical. When you consider some things, you may say, hey, we may slide a week before the next service picks up or whatever, not on life safety issues. So we take this item very seriously, and our goal as a city is to provide the best service to our citizens as possible. And we know we have extremely capable police and fire, and we just want to have that same expectation and achievement by those who we contract to extend those type of life safety opportunities. So with that, Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for this opportunity to come talk to you about an ambulance transport RFP. I'm going to talk, I've got several slides here. I'll try to go quickly. You all are aware this has been an issue in the city for some time, so it's no surprise to you. I do want to stress before I get started that nothing in my presentation is meant to be an attack on our current provider, EMSA. We've enjoyed a good relationship with them for many years, but the past 33 months has not been up to the standards that we expect, and that's why I'm coming to talk with you and give you a little history about that. So I wanted to start with a little bit of history about our current provider and that relationship. And so got a few dates here for you. 1977, EMSA started as a trust in Tulsa. It was successful there, and in 1990 it came to the Oklahoma City metro area after the provider that most of the metro area was using fell into difficulty. The trust came to Oklahoma City area, and during that time it was split into an eastern and a western division. So eastern division, Tulsa and the area cities around Tulsa. The western division was here in the Oklahoma City metro area. And at the time, there were about 19 non-beneficiary cities that participated or were able to participate in the trust here in the western division. Many of those did. We're down to only a handful of those cities remaining, Edmond being one, War Acres in the village, and then you've got the town of Arcadia. And so it's pretty small. Lake Aluma, I think, is still in it, and Valley Brook. So when I say beneficiary cities, keep in mind the trust is for the cities of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. The trust is designed for them. The others are non-beneficiary cities. However, during the time that we've been in the trust as Edmond, we have been treated as a non-beneficiary city, and I'll speak to that a little bit more later. Even though we weren't technically although we weren't technically a beneficiary city, we were treated. We enjoyed the treatment of a beneficiary city, and that has since changed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. In 1990s, EMSA began to have experienced financial difficulties as they grew and as the service grew. And since 1999, there's been annual subsidies paid by all the participating cities. And you all are aware that we have an annual subsidy that's usually around $660,000 that's paid to EMSA for services here in the city. That amount does increase at times if they do a mid-year increase, and that happens periodically. But those subsidies has gone on since 1999. In 2020, there were operational changes versus the way EMSA used to run as a public utility model. So just a little bit about that. A public utility model is basically a government agency, a quasi-government agency, a trust, and then you have a EMSA who oversees a contract. Okay, so there's competitive bidding, goes out to competitive bidding so that you're getting the best deal for the participating cities, and in this case, EMSA would operate as that oversight. They have the ability to assess fines for non-compliance. They go out to competitive bidding and so forth. Well, that all changed in 2020 when EMSA decided to run the service themselves. They got into a lawsuit with their provider, and they decided to run the service themselves, and everything kind of changed at that point. And then 2023, there were changes to the trust document. Some of those changes had to happen, in my opinion, to allow EMSA to continue running the service instead of operating out of a trust. But we'll talk about some of those changes and the results of those. here in just a minute. History of Edmond's relationship with Edmond, again, started as far as I know, we started in 1990. I don't have records going back that far, but I assume that we started shortly after they came to the Western Division. But again, Edmond, as far back as I can tell, Edmond was treated as a beneficiary city, although technically we're not. And by that, we have a seat on the board. There's an 11-member board that runs the EMSA Trust Board of Trustees. Our current city manager sits on that board. Our city manager before sat on that board for his entire time that he was in Edmond, I believe, for almost 21 years. So also the fire chief had a seat at the table. So any meetings that happened between, not any meetings, but a lot of the meetings that happened between Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Edmond was the kind of the third seat. And I had the chief or the department had a lot of input into things that were going on operationally and so forth in EMSA. Some changes happened. Various service providers were contracted with EMSA over the years. Paramedics Plus, AMR, they've had different providers because, again, they would go out to competitive bidding and they would award the bid. And, again, that worked in the favor of the participating cities to know that we were getting the best deal, if you will. Some changes in response time standards have happened in this time. At one point, response times were 7 minutes and 59 seconds for Priority 1 incidents. And over the years, that increased to 8 minutes and 59 seconds for Priority 1 incidents, and eventually that's kind of settled at 10 minutes and 59 seconds is where we are now. So Priority 1 incidents are your more serious medical calls, okay? And under current documents, they have 10 minutes and 59 seconds to arrive at 90% of those Priority 1 incidents. Priority 2 incidents, 24 minutes and 59 seconds is what they have to reach 90% of the time. But over the years, those have changed, but basically it's been an increase to where they sit now. Again, there's been good working relationship between the agencies. Our field paramedics work very well together. We have good relationship with our medical director, and we've had good relationships with the EMSA leadership over the years. Compliance has been satisfactory until May of 2020, and that's when COVID happened. So again, late 2019, early 2020 is when EMSA changed the way that they've been operating, and they started providing the services. COVID hit shortly thereafter, and things have never been the same. There's never been a recovery since that time. That's why I'm here today. We feel like we're going on 3 years of non-compliance. They've yet to hit compliance in the last 33 months a single time. And Priority 2 compliance, they did hit it last month. They were right at 90%, but that's 32 out of the last 33 months of non-compliance. So we feel like what our citizens deserve better, and that's why we're here today. Is let's see what's out there. Let's see what's available, if you will. COVID and changes to the trust, again, COVID pandemic in early 2020, and that was a hit on all ambulance services across the country, across the globe, really. However, we're past COVID, and we expect that should have been remedied by now, and we're still struggling to meet our response time standards. Again, the 2023 documents or November 23, the updated trust documents. That was just here a few months ago. And unfortunately, the changes that happened to the trust are, in my opinion, a detriment to Edmond. It removes a lot of our protections. It really gives us, the end result is we don't have a contract. We can't enforce it. They're no longer going out to the competitive bidding. So there's just lots of things that I think work against us there. And so, again, the bottom line is we're still experiencing an unacceptable lack of compliance. Effects of that lack of performance and changes to the trust, again, mainly are to our patients, to our citizens. I know some of you have been contacted over the last few years about long ambulance response times, and there have been some long ones. At times they've exceeded 2 hours. That's not the norm now. There has been improvement, I'll tell you, although we are still experiencing unacceptable wait times. So there's also our operations. We're filling the void, if you will. The fire department is filling the void. Our folks are out on the scene, waiting. They're providing care for EMSA while EMSA arrives. And as you all know, that affects our readiness across the city, because every minute that we are on scene waiting unnecessarily for an ambulance to arrive is a minute that we're not available for that next emergency. So frequently we're having to send an apparatus from across town to a call that should be able to be handled by a closer company, but they're just not available. They're on scene there. So that's been a real struggle for us. And then, of course, for the City of Edmond, the changes to the trust I mentioned earlier, we now have no ability to ensure compliance. We're used to EMSA could fine the contractor when they weren't meeting compliance. Now we can't fine EMSA, if you will. So we have no ability to really enforce a contract in any way. We have no contingency for the future pandemics is a real concern there. We're not meeting. They're not meeting standards now, and should we have another pandemic in the future, I don't see anything changing with that. And then also the City of Edmond faces the possibility of services being dropped with 180 days of notice. That's in essence what has to happen. They give us notice that they're dropping us. So should we have another pandemic or something, we would be struggling to find a solution at that time. All right, what have we done? Well, we've continued to collaborate. We've collaborated with EMSA leadership since the start of the non-compliance. I know at times I was personally meeting with them more than once a month, and then for many times we met monthly. We continue to work with them, and yet the non-compliance does continue, although it is getting better. Edmond Fire Department crews continue to fill the void, and that is ongoing. We've met with other ambulance transport agencies. I believe maybe some of them may have reached out to some of you over the past few years, but they've reached out to us. We have met with other transport agencies, and I will tell you, I believe we are a very desirable market here in Edmond, in the opinion of other transport companies. And that's certainly what we hope to see. If we go out to RFP, we hope to see a lot of interest. We've talked with other fire departments here in the metro area, in Texas and other states, to see what their cities are doing. And that led to this draft that's before you of an RFP after talking with lots of different departments and agencies. And my staff, Chief Weaver's back here in the back, he and his staff have been working for the last several months on developing this RFP, and we believe it's ready to go out. So that's our recommendation, is that we hold an RFP process for ambulance transport services in the City of Edmond. We hope to get a lot of people applying for that. We hope to advertise that as soon as we get your approval. We'll be putting the word out that we're doing this. I will say, EMSA, in case any of you are wondering, is EMSA able to put in for this? Absolutely. They are. The difference would be they'd have to comply with our RFP and our contract, and we would actually have a contract that we could hold whoever we award that to. The city would be able to hold them accountable for the contract. So the key points of the RFP, just a few of them. Again, we'd have an enforceable contract with defined fines and liquidated damages. If you've had a chance to look in that, you see there's all kinds of fines in there. We really feel like whatever the company we go with agrees to, we should be able to hold them to that. We're not okay with hour-long responses, so there's fines in there. If responses are more than 5 minutes late, there's fines for that. If they don't meet their compliance, there's fines for that. If they have back-to-back months of non-compliance, there's additional fines for that. So there's lots of fines built into the RFP, and of course, anything will be finalized in a final contract. It is a 1-year contract with an option to renew annually for up to 5 years. So if both parties are happy with the services, we can renew it for up to 5 years, and then we'll go back out. And we believe that's good too, because we're always keeping it fresh and keeping people interested in that. We will have ambulances dedicated to the City of Edmond 24/7, 365, which we currently do not have with EMSA. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but EMSA posts 2 ambulances in our city when they're able to. So we have an ambulance that's posted at on queue at I-35 and 15th, and another ambulance posted at the on queue over here at Broadway and 9th. That's when they're able to. If they're able to post an ambulance, they do. If they're not able to, then our ambulance will be coming from Oklahoma City. And so under this RFP, we will have dedicated ambulances here in the City of Edmond. Standby coverage for special events. We got a lot going on in Edmond, and there's a lot of those things that we need an ambulance on standby for. Priority 1 and Priority 2 incidents, for Priority 1, we're actually proposing that we lower or that we keep the time of 10:59 for Priority 1 incidents, but for Priority 2 incidents, we're lowering that time down to 19:59. And obviously, again, with our final contract, we can do anything we want to with those times. We can lower those times and ensure that people got there earlier. We do plan to continue the membership program. As you all are aware, we have, through utility bills, our citizens can do $3 a month towards a membership program, and we utilize that money to pay the EMSA subsidy now. And the plan would be to utilize that money and hopefully pay for the contract going forward. So we do plan to, that is in there, that we want to do that. And then there's no automatic exclusion for late calls. So currently, per the trust agreement, there are a lot of exclusions, or there are certain exclusions that EMSA gets for weather and different defined things in there, that those calls are excluded from non-compliance, if you will. In this RFP, we're not excluding anything. So there are some things that they can petition for an exclusion, and we can make a determination at that time whether those calls will be excluded or not. Past experience in ALS Transport, we're not looking for a startup company. We're too large of a city with too big of a population. We're not looking for a startup company. We're looking for a company that has experience in dealing with ALS transport services. Emergency and disaster assistance is important, so they're going to have to, in the RFP, define what capabilities they have to deal with tornadoes and large events. Can they bring in other resources from different areas? Contingency allowance there. That right there, one of the things we're talking about is the ability for us to staff an ambulance with our paramedics should the need be. If they know that they're unable for whatever reason, staffing difficulties or whatever, that we would be able then to staff their ambulance with our personnel, and they would reimburse us for that. Medical oversight. In the RFP, they've got to give us their options for medical oversight. I will say we have enjoyed wonderful medical oversight with OMD and Dr. Jeffrey Goodlow. That has been a very good thing for our department, for our city, and for our citizens. We do some real cutting-edge things that make a real difference. There is a possibility, no matter who we go with, that's a possibility that we could continue with that medical oversight, as long as that's a possibility with the RFP provider. So they're going to have to let us know what options we have under their contract for medical oversight. There is a possibility of a co-branded ambulance option. So if we wanted this ambulance to say City of Edmond or Edmond and whatever the name of the company, that we could do something like that if that was be important to our citizens, that they see an Edmond on the ambulance there. And then the possibility for the fire department to purchase ambulances at cost. Again, this is kind of a contingency. You all are aware of our two-person squad program that we've implemented. And our thinking is that might be a good thing to run that squad out of an ambulance to give us the contingency to be able to transport if we had to transport. And in talking to some of these providers, there is at least with some of them, there's the opportunity that we would be able to purchase ambulances at their cost, and they get significant cost savings because they have a nationwide purchasing, and so that's a possibility also. And of course, all the final details will be determined in a final contract. Timelines, if you all vote to have us proceed with this, then we will plan to go out, open it up on or shortly after May 1 of 2023. So we'll get to work tomorrow, get the word out, let people know that we are proceeding with an RFP, advertise as much as we can. Those proposals will be due on June 15th, which is not quite 7 weeks after opening. Give people plenty of time to get their questions answered and get their proposals into us. Those proposals will be reviewed by a committee after the closing date. And I will stress here, I don't need anything today, but if you all have some thoughts on that committee, either a council person serving on that committee, a citizen serving on that committee, or both, you might speak with the city manager and let us know what your preference is there. But we're going to have a committee that reviews those, and then we will interview our finalist or finalists and come back with a suggestion on moving forward on that. Of course, negotiation of the final contract, and then when the time is right, we will transition to the selected provider. I will mention, too, I've talked several times with the EMSA CEO. I know our city manager has, too. This is no surprise to them. I haven't shared that we've done this. I think you have, Scott. But I have shared many times over the last couple of years that we likely were going to get to this point where we'd be going out to RFP, and they have stressed to me that they will do their absolute best to work with us. Should we end up leaving our partnership with EMSA, they will work with us and make that as seamless of a transition as possible. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be any hard timelines that we're going to have to scramble to meet. It's when things are right and we know that it's ready and the system is ready to roll out, then we'll do it at that time. All right, any questions?
So there's no, we don't have provisions in our current arrangement that we have to give them 90-day, 120-day, 180-day notice or anything like that? In
the actual trust documents, we were supposed to give them 180 days of notice. Yes, and I have talked specifically with the president and CEO. They're going to try to hold us to a hard 180 days. And what was told me is no, not in any way, not on the front end or not on the back end. You know, it's just when let them know and they'll work with us, and then when the time is right. I believe Bixby is doing something similar and has been for a couple of years, and it hasn't happened yet, but they continue to work towards that. So, any other questions?
Well, I'm in full support of this. I think it's a good time to take a look, and for several reasons. And I read your letter. It's kind of the memo that was kind of attached to this, and I think there's reasonable reasons behind this population growth in our metro, them being able to keep up with staffing and just resources to be able to do it, and just Edmond's growth, period. We've become big enough to have our own needs and our specific needs and emergency services just tied to our city limits, within our city limits. And so I think we've crossed that threshold. And so I'm in full support and anxious to see what kind of interest and proposals you get. I do think that I might offer my opinion on this. I think a balanced committee of citizen and some expertise on that in a few different areas would be good, because I do think it'll be very competitive between these private companies, and the more buffer you get between a citizen committee would probably help kind of keep that off of the council members.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hold on.
Just a comment. Again, I want to stress, we're going to go out for our request for proposal. Our staff will not make a recommendation on changing provider unless we are ultimately, to the utmost we can, have confidence that any other provider can meet the standard that we expect. So we've had discussions with EMSA. They may be a respondent to it, and we'd encourage them to do that. We may go out and do a request for proposal and get 1. We may get 0. We may get 5. So I just want to be very clear to council that we may be back here in 60 days let's just say we only have minimal response and say none of them meet the threshold we expect, and then we'll have to kind of reconvene next steps. That may mean we continue to go with EMSA, and we have to be open to that. And I know the chief and I are committed to continue to work with them through this process. I'll be very clear that just because somebody looks good on a paper and they respond to us, if we don't check all the boxes, check the references, and make sure they can meet all the protocols and procedures, we won't be here to make a recommendation just because of the nature of this. It's one thing to miss a mowing for a couple weeks. It's not another thing to miss grandma or that situation. So we take this very seriously. So,
and I like your strict guidelines. I don't think there's room to waver when it has to do with safety, when it has to do with an emergent situation. If somebody can't meet those strict guidelines, I'm all for strict guidelines with that every single time. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.